Thank you. Good audience participation. Good morning. Thank you. And can I actually say thank you? Obviously, we thank the Lord and in our prayers and thank the Holy Spirit. But thank you guys for turning up this morning. I don't know if you've all recovered from the shock of losing an hour, but I'm still reeling from it. So thank you for turning up and not staying at home under the duvets with your hot chocolates, watching this on YouTube. I appreciate it, and hopefully the Lord will do a good thing amongst us this morning. Thank you for being here. So, as some of you will know, most of you know, it is Palm Sunday today. Now, I was a little surprised. Do we have any of those palm crosses somewhere buried in the boxes? I felt. No, we don't. All right, okay. We're running things. It's a little bit of a shoestring budget for today's production, but we've all seen these palm crosses. Certainly, you'll remember from Sundays or from your childhoods or your teens or your as an adult, seeing these on a particular Sunday at a particular church. Anglican churches, Baptists love these. I used to go to Purley Baptist Church, and they can't wait to give these out. So we love a good palm cross. So that's what we'll be talking about today, Palm Sunday, which was the day we celebrate when Jesus came to Jerusalem just before Easter Sunday. So it's very important. Before he came to do his work on the cross, he enters into Jerusalem, and the cheering crowds whip off palm leaves, lay them down, wave them in the air, and celebrate this coming king. So that's what we'll be talking about today. But before I take you back 2,000 years back to Jerusalem, I want to go to a slightly more glamorous starting point, which is the beautiful people of the Oscars. As many of you may know, if you sort of keep abreast of these things, earlier this month we had the Oscars. And, I don't really need to tell you what it's about, but each and every year, the biggest names in Hollywood gather in Los Angeles for what they call the Academy Awards, which is where they hand out these Oscars. And, we've all seen it, right? Actors, directors, and celebrities arrive in glamorous cars, limos, Bentleys, Daimlers. They step out onto the red carpet. It's where we get that phrase, the red carpet treatment. Cameras flash, crowds cheer, the clothes are perfect, the lighting is perfect. The teeth are perfect, particularly in America where everyone's teeth are perfect. The Brits always seem to let us down in that regards on the red carpet. And not saying this enviously, the hair is perfect as well, not a hair out of place. And the whole world watches as the stars make their entrance. It's carefully choreographed, of course, not a moment wasted. And the entrance is designed to impress. We are wowed when we see these people, whether we're watching it live, we're watching the stills in the newspapers, we're wowed when we see them. And of course, and I was watching this, it was actually quite fascinating. I was watching this on YouTube, one of those streams, where you can watch it live. I wasn't watching on telly, I was watching on YouTube. You sort of see as people step out of the car and they step onto the red carpet, even though you basically know who they are. Although, as I'm getting, quote-unquote, older, I begin to not know who some of these stars are. I had to go for some people who actually didn't win this year just so I could keep up with them. But people crowd. The people who are, whether they're the fans or the cameras or wherever, people sort of hustle and bustle as they're walking up going, who is this? Trying to get a look at who is the next star coming up that red carpet. Everyone wants to know, and this is the key question of today, who is that? And then the camera zooms in. It's like a drone or something. It zooms in from like a overhead and it zooms down. And then you see a little ticker tape come up, a little pop-up, and it will say Leonardo DiCaprio, Denzel Washington, Meryl Streep. And in a strange way, I want you to hold this picture of the Oscars and all its opulence and beauty and glamour. Keep that in your head today as we talk about Palm Sunday, because I want to contrast it a little bit. But in the same way, long before Hollywood invented the red carpet, something a bit like that, maybe not quite as glamorous as this, was happening in Jerusalem. A certain man, Jesus, was entering the city. Crowds lined the road. People were shouting and cheering. Branches were waving, those palm branches I referred to earlier. Cloaks were spread out before him. The city was buzzing with excitement. And people were asking the exact same question. Those, who is this? Who's this coming? Who is this person? Why should we care? And to center us on Palm Sunday, we're going to do a bit of a reading now from Matthew. I've got a few verses just before this, but it will end on this verse you can see here. This is from Matthew. So all of the Gospels have an account of this Palm Sunday entrance. This is Matthew's account. As they approached Jerusalem and came to Bethphage on the Mount of Olives, Jesus sent 2 disciples, saying to them, Go to the village ahead of you, and at once you will find a donkey tied there, with her colt by her. Untie them and bring them to me. If anyone says anything to you, say that the Lord needs them, and he will send them right away. This took place to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet. This is a quote now. Say to daughter Zion, see, your king comes to you, gentle and riding on a donkey, and on a colt, the foal of a donkey. End of that quote. The disciples went and did as Jesus had instructed them. They brought the donkey and the colt and placed their cloaks on them for Jesus to sit on them. A very large, I'm smiling, it's making me think of like a very early Uber, the fact that they brought it to him. A very large crowd spread their cloaks on the road, while others cut branches from the trees and spread them on the road. The crowds then went ahead of him, and those that followed shouted, Hosanna, that's a word we hear, Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest heaven. When Jesus entered Jerusalem, the whole city was stirred and asked, Who is this? And the crowds answered, This is Jesus, the prophet from Nazareth in Galilee. So, as I said before, today is Palm Sunday, where we remember one of the most famous scenes in the life of Jesus. Jesus entering Jerusalem, crowds lining the road, cloaks spread on the ground, and palm branches waving in the air. As you heard, or as you can see, people shouted with excitement, Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest heaven. It looks like a victory parade, if you can imagine it. It feels like a royal arrival. But, and hopefully I'm going to impress this upon you today, Palm Sunday is far deeper than a celebration. It raises one of the most important questions anyone will face, or rather everyone has to face. Because at the end of the passage, as you can see here, we read the words, when Jesus entered Jerusalem, the whole city was stirred and asked, Who is this? That's the question at the heart of the passage. Who is this? And this is what we're going to look at today in 3 parts. This is what Matthew's taking us through. Matthew tells us who Jesus is. Matthew shows us how the people respond to him. And then Matthew zones in on that question we all have to answer. At some point, there's a reckoning. We all have to answer, who do we think Jesus is? So, to that first point, the unexpected king. See, your king comes to you riding on a donkey. See, your king comes to you riding on a donkey. As Jesus approaches Jerusalem, he gives a very specific instruction. He sends 2 disciples to fetch a donkey and its colt. Now, at first, this may seem like a strange detail, but Matthew immediately tells us this took place to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet. See, your king comes to you. So it is a quote from Zechariah. See, your king comes to you, gentle and riding on a donkey, and on a colt, the foal of a donkey. Matthew's quoting Zechariah. We heard about Zephaniah earlier, but we're talking about Zechariah here. Matthew is quoting Zechariah 9:9, written hundreds of years earlier. See, your king comes to you, gentle and riding on a donkey, and on a colt, the foal of a donkey. And in other words, this is not a random moment. It's deliberate. Jesus is intentionally presenting himself as the promised king in or from Zechariah's prophecy. And as an aside, it's one of the things that gives me great confidence in Jesus in the Bible. I haven't written this down, but as I was rereading this, I was thinking about it. There are hundreds of, it's something unreal. It's probably like over 400 prophecies in the Old Testament, all through. Jesus runs all through those confusing books in the Old Testament we sometimes avoid because they're a bit complex or odd or strange things are happening. There are so many prophecies in the Old Testament. I'm just talking about Zechariah 9, but all through those Old Testament books, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, all of them have prophecies or things that point to Jesus. It's wonderful when you see how Jesus fulfilled these things written hundreds, sometimes thousands of years before he came to earth. And you can have confidence in Jesus because of that. But to come back to Palm Sunday, this moment of Jesus riding a donkey is not random, it's deliberate. Like I said, Jesus is intentionally presenting himself as the promised king. But notice the kind of king he is. He doesn't arrive on a war horse. He doesn't arrive with soldiers. He doesn't arrive with power and military strength. He arrives riding on a donkey. A king riding on a donkey kind of symbolizes peace, humility. War horses are for conquering kings. Donkeys are for peaceful rulers. And Jesus is making a statement about the kind of king he is. And it's a complete opposite of the kind of arrival we typically celebrate today. When those celebrities I showed you earlier arrive at the Oscars, everything's designed to project glamour and wealth and beauty and opulence. You can kind of just see it top left. You know, everything's me, I, how rich I am, how good looking I am, how powerful. I guess, don't know if you attribute that to an actor, but you know what I mean. Luxury cars, flashing cameras, perfect outfits, the entrance is meant to impress at the Oscars. But when the true king arrives, he comes in humility. No red carpet, no spotlight, no display of power, just a donkey. And it's because Jesus didn't come necessarily to impress people. He came to save them. It's a key thing to remember. Jesus didn't come to impress people. So much of our world is about impressing others, gaining their favor, being liked by them. Jesus came to save people. He didn't come to conquer Rome. At that time that Jerusalem was under Roman occupation. He wasn't coming to establish an earthly empire. He was coming to bring peace, and we've talked about this through our book, through Romans. He was coming to bring peace between God and humanity. Jesus is a king, but not the kind of king people expected. And even today, people still misunderstand Jesus. Some want Jesus to be a political leader. Maybe we're slightly guilty of that. Some want him, I know I'm guilty of this, some want him to affirm their lives and choices. We want a Jesus who agrees with everything we want. If we want to be rich or affluent, we want a Lord who will give us that. Or if we want a certain thing or a certain outcome, we want a Jesus that falls in line with what we want. Some of us want a Jesus that will solve their problems. But Jesus, whilst he can do all those things, that doesn't negate him from those things, but primarily Jesus came for something much deeper. He came to deal with the greatest problem humanity faces. We've definitely talked about this, sin. And if you want to know more about that word and the importance of it, go and check out our previous sermons and talks on Romans. We've been really digging into sin, how it separates us from God who wants to have a relationship with us, and how Jesus builds a bridge. And we'll hear more about that actually on Easter Sunday next week, so very exciting. But the point I really want to talk about today is that this is an unexpected king. Jesus isn't necessarily ticking the boxes of what we envision a king should be or do. To which I want to move us now to the excited crowd, the second actor or actress in this story, the second party in this story. The crowds that went ahead of him and those that followed shouted. As Jesus enters the city, the crowds begin to respond. Matthew tells us that people spread their cloaks on the road. Others cut branches and lay them down before him. And this was an ancient way of honoring a king. It was a sign of submission and a sign of welcome. And the people are shouting, "Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest heaven." You'll see the word Hosanna there. Does anyone know? Just quick pop quiz. Anyone know what Hosanna means? We say it all the time. What does Hosanna mean? Anyone feeling? Good work. Good work. Save us now. Save us now. Extra McVitie's biscuit for you, Jen. Good work. Hosanna means save us now. Save us now. Hosanna to the Son of David. Hosanna in the highest heaven. The crowd believes salvation has arrived. They believe the Messiah, the anointed one, the promised one that they've been searching their Jewish scriptures for, have come. And in many ways, they are right. Jesus is the Messiah. Jesus is the King. But the crowd misunderstands the kind of salvation he will bring. As I said, they expected political freedom. They wanted deliverance from Rome. They wanted a revolution. But Jesus is not entering Jerusalem to start a rebellion. He's entering Jerusalem, and again, we'll learn more about this next week, to go to the cross. And in some ways, the crowd treats Jesus the way crowds treat celebrities today. Because at the Oscars, as I was saying to you before, people cheer and they take photos and they celebrate the moment and they're jubilant. But their excitement when those actors and actresses and directors and film stars step up the red carpet doesn't necessarily mean understanding. People can celebrate someone. Think of how we all, or maybe we did before social media, we knew what they were really like. Think of how we used to idolize these people, you know, these movie stars. We wanted to be like them. We thought they were so wise and knowledgeable when they were doing their interviews and their humanitarian exercises. But I guess the point I'm trying to say is that we can celebrate someone without really knowing who they are. Based on what we think they're like, who they are. And the same sort of thing is happening here, because the same city that shouts Hosanna on Sunday is going to shout crucify him on the following Friday. I'm going to say that again. The same city that shouts Hosanna, Hosanna, hooray, thank you, Jesus, we love you, thank you for coming, are the same people that shout, or some of the same people that shout, crucify him come Friday. The same crowd that welcomes him will soon reject him. It's possible to be excited about Jesus without truly understanding him. It's possible to praise Jesus publicly, but not follow him faithfully. The crowd celebrates the king they want, but they are not ready for the king who actually came. Excuse me. Which brings me to my third and final point, which is the essential question. When Jesus entered Jerusalem, the whole city stirred and asked, "Who is this?" Matthew ends this scene, that little reading that I gave you at the beginning, with a fascinating detail. He says, when Jesus entered Jerusalem, the whole city was stirred. The word Matthew uses suggests something like an earthquake. The city is shaken. People are asking, like I said, who is this? And the crowd answers, this is Jesus, the prophet from Nazareth in Galilee. And when celebrities arrive on that red carpet, like I was saying earlier, the cameras zoom in and someone announces their name. The crowd gets the answer immediately. Or if you're watching online like I was, there's a little pop-up, a little sort of thing which says, Alicia Silverstone, Josh Groban. The crowd gets the answer immediately. And like I said before, if you're a bit like me and increasingly out of touch with modern celebrities, it actually helps when they do that so that I actually know who they are. But in Jerusalem, on that fateful Palm Sunday, the answer is not so simple. But Matthew has been showing us something more through his gospel. And you have to really read the whole gospel. And I encourage you to do it in time for next week, Sunday. Go and pick up Matthew's gospel or Mark, quite short, easy to power through. All of them, these gospels show us Jesus is not just a prophet. He's the son of David. He's the promised, remember I talked about all those hundreds of prophecies? He's a promised Messiah. He's a king who has come to save us from our sins, save us from our separation from God. And Palm Sunday confronts every person with this question. Who is Jesus? Is he just a good teacher? I think we all know by now most people will say, yeah, he's a good guy, had some nice things to say. That's basically the baseline of knowledge in modern society nowadays about Britain. He was a good teacher, nice enough guy, had some nice things to say. Don't know what they were, but they weren't too bad or harmful. Was Jesus a historical figure? Was he a prophet? Or is he truly the king who came to save? The crowd gave an answer that was only partly true, but Matthew wants us to see the full truth. Jesus is the king. He's not just a prophet, although he is prophetic and fulfilling prophecies, but he's the king. He rules over all. But he's a king. Here's the interesting thing. He's a king who rules through sacrifice. He's a king who conquers not with armies, but with love. And he's a king who enters Jerusalem not to take a throne, which is what they wanted to do. The crowd wanted to enthrone him as their new political ruler, but to go to a cross, because that's how he saves his people. And I guess that brings us to really two questions we need to think about today. Because as I said, Palm Sunday is a moment of celebration, but today, this Palm Sunday is also a moment of decision. A moment of decision, not just celebration, but also decision. This isn't the kind of talk where you just sort of let it wash over you and just move on and think that was nice. You have to make a decision when you hear something like this or when you read it for yourself. The people in Jerusalem had to answer the question, like I said, who is this? And today we must answer the same question. Our neighbours must answer the same question. Our colleagues, our friends, our families, our spouses, lovers, children, whomever, must all answer that same question. Who is this? It's really the only question that matters ultimately when the chips are down. There are other important questions in life, but this is the one on that final day, whatever it is for you, that you have to be able to answer and get correct. Who is Jesus? Is he someone we simply admire? Or is he someone we celebrate occasionally? There's an expression that's just come to me in the C of E when they talk about, there's Christians who come for hatch, match, and dispatch. People just sort of rock up to church because it's a cultural English thing to do, or their grandma was a Catholic, so they're kind of Catholics. But they just come for funerals or weddings, which are lovely things, by the way, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing. But it's the sort of thing that we celebrate occasionally. It's a cultural relationship, isn't it? Jesus did something, and we kind of do it now because we're all British, and churches look nice. But, or is Jesus truly the king of our lives each and every day? Is he someone we admire? Is he someone we celebrate occasionally? Or is he the king of our lives? Is he sovereign over everything? Do we run every decision through him? Is he in charge as far as we're concerned? The king who came humbly on a donkey is also the king who died on a cross and rose again. And again, we'll hear about that next week. He's a king who came to save. And the question that remains for each of us, maybe something we can pray over, again, not now, but towards the end, maybe when Mark and Marty bring it to a close, or Chris or whomever, maybe something for us to think about or pray over. If any of you want prayer about these questions or the implications of these questions, we can do it at the end. Who is Jesus, and what will you do with him on this Palm Sunday? Thank you. Amen. And thank you to everyone online, watching online. There we go, got it. Thank you.